Lieutenant Eric Mason stared at the ruins of New Olympus Colony through the viewport of the rescue shuttle. 6 hours ago, this had been home to 1,200 colonists. Now it was a smoking crater on the Martian landscape. He gripped the handrail as the shuttle descended. The attack had been swift and devastating. No warning, no communication, no demands. The alien vessel had appeared from nowhere, unleashed hell, and vanished. "Lieutenant, we're approaching the emergency shelter," the pilot called back. "Sensors show 17 survivors. 17 out of 1,200. Eric felt his stomach tighten. His sister Kate had been stationed here as a hydroponics specialist. The shuttle touched down amidst the debris. Eric led his team through the airlock, medical kits in hand. The survivors huddled in a reinforced bunker that had somehow withstood the attack. Their faces were hollow with shock, covered in dust and dried blood. "Lieutenant Mason, Earth Defense Force," Eric announced, scanning the faces. "No, Kate, we're here to evacuate you." A woman with a bandaged head stepped forward. "Dr. Patel, colony physician. We're all that's left." "What happened?" Eric asked, helping an elderly man to his feet. "They came without warning," Dr. Patel said. "A ship like nothing I've ever seen. It fired some kind of energy weapon." The colony dome collapsed almost instantly. As the medics tended to the survivors, Eric stepped outside again. The Martian wind whistled through his suit's external microphones, carrying dust across the devastation. He stared up at the rust-colored sky. They were out there somewhere. The return journey to Earth was silent. Eric sat alone, reviewing the data they'd recovered from the colony's damaged systems. The attack had lasted exactly 6 minutes and 28 seconds. Precise. Calculated. 3 days later, Earth's united governments formed the Planetary Defense Coalition. The attack had done what decades of political negotiation couldn't. It had unified humanity against a common threat. Admiral Olivia Winters presided over the first PTC meeting at their hastily established headquarters in Geneva. Eric stood at attention as she addressed the assembled military leaders. "The data recovered from New Olympus is disturbing," she said, her gray eyes steady beneath close-cropped silver hair. "The aliens bypassed our early warning systems completely. Analysis suggests their technology is at least a century beyond our own." The room's display lit up with images captured just before the colony's cameras failed. "We're calling them the Vraxian Collective, based on intercepted communications," continued Dr. Abrams, the lead xenobiologist. "And this wasn't first contact." Murmurs spread through the room. Dr. Abrams pointed to a series of orbital anomalies dating back 20 years. "They've been watching us, studying us. The attack wasn't random. It was a test." Admiral Winters waited for the commotion to settle. Humanity passed the first test by surviving. But they'll be back to administer the next one. She nodded to a communications officer who pressed a button. "Yesterday, we sent this message on all frequencies, in all known mathematical languages." A simple image appeared on screen. Earth, surrounded by a defensive perimeter, with the decoded message. "We are not your prey. We are not your experiment. Any further aggression will be met with our full response." "Bold," muttered General Cruz, essentially inviting them back for a fight we can't win. "A fight we can't avoid," Winters corrected. "But we won't be defenseless next time." She turned to Eric. "Lieutenant Mason, you're being reassigned. Report to the shipyards tomorrow. You'll be joining the crew of our first deep space battleship." Eric nodded. "The name of the vessel, ma'am?" A thin smile crossed Admiral Winters' face. Defiance. That night, Eric stood at the window of his apartment, looking up at the stars. Somewhere among them, Kate's killers were deciding their next move. He thought about the message humanity had sent to the cosmos. It wasn't really a warning. It was a promise. 6 months after the Mars attack, the Planetary Defense Coalition headquarters hummed with activity. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, fueled by a mixture of fear and determination. In the main research laboratory, Dr. Nathan Reed hunched over a workstation, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Try it again," he said to his assistant, pushing his glasses up his nose. The laboratory team activated the test chamber. Inside, a salvaged piece of Vraxian technology fired a concentrated energy beam at a small shield generator. Previous tests had ended with the shield collapsing in seconds. This time, the shield glowed bright blue, but held steady. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, counted the assistant. Dr. Reed allowed himself a small smile. Power consumption stable at 73%. The team erupted in cheers. Dr. Reed had modified Earth's experimental shield technology using principles reverse-engineered from the wreckage at Mars. The breakthrough could give humanity a fighting chance. Across the complex, Intelligence Officer Samantha Collins sat in a dimly lit room, surrounded by holographic displays. For months, she had analyzed the fragmented communications captured during the Mars attack. Today, something clicked. "They don't see us as equals," she explained to her supervisor. "These patterns here," she highlighted a sequence of symbols, "appear in other contexts when they discuss laboratory specimens. You're saying they view us as lab rats?" he asked. Samantha nodded grimly. The Mars attack wasn't an invasion. It was an experiment to measure our response capabilities. The information reached Admiral Winters within the hour. She stood on the observation deck of the orbital shipyard, watching construction teams swarm over the hull of the Defiance. Lieutenant Mason floated nearby, overseeing the installation of weapon systems. "Lieutenant," called Winters, "walk with me." They moved through the shipyard toward a secure meeting room. Through the viewports, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness of space. Surrounding the planet, tiny lights marked the positions of newly installed defense platforms. "Dr. Reed's shield technology is ready for deployment," Winters said. "We're installing it on major population centers first, then military installations." "Will it be enough, Admiral?" Eric asked. "Against their full capabilities?" "No, but it buys us time." She activated a holographic display showing the solar system. Red markers indicated the early warning network humanity had established throughout their planetary neighborhood. "We've also made progress understanding their biology," Winters continued. "The Vraxians appear to share a form of collective consciousness. Individualism as we understand it doesn't exist for them. They expand by finding species worthy of." She paused, searching for the right word. "Harvesting." Eric's jaw tightened. "And Mars was their way of testing if we're worth the trouble." "Precisely. But they miscalculated. They expected either immediate surrender or disorganized resistance. Our united response has likely confused them." A lieutenant burst into the room. "Admiral, we have movement." An unidentified object just appeared near Jupiter's orbit. The early warning system had worked. On the display, a blinking light showed the position of what could only be another Vraxian vessel. But this one was moving slowly, methodically scanning Jupiter's moons. "It's smaller than the ship that hit Mars," said the lieutenant. "Possibly a scout." Admiral Winters studied the display, her expression calculating. "This is it. Our first chance to show them we're not helpless." She turned to Eric. "The Defiance isn't fully operational, but its main systems are online. Assemble your crew." "Are we engaging, Admiral?" Eric asked. "Not just engaging, Lieutenant. We're going to capture that ship." As alarms sounded throughout the shipyard, Eric felt a surge of adrenaline. For 6 months, humanity had prepared, unified by the horror of Mars. Now they would see if it had been enough. The Defiance's engines fired up for the first time, its hull gleaming under the shipyard lights. The name painted on its side was more than a word now. It was humanity's answer to the stars. The Defiance led a small fleet of 3 ships toward Jupiter, moving on a course that kept them hidden behind the gas giant's moons. On the bridge, Admiral Winters studied the tactical display while Lieutenant Mason monitored the weapons systems. "Vraxian scouts still in position near Europa," reported the sensor officer. "They appear to be taking samples from the ice surface." Winters nodded. "Perfect. They're distracted and alone. She turned to the communication station. All ships execute Operation Perimeter. The human vessels split up, each taking position around the Vraxian scout, but remaining hidden. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would surround the alien ship and attack simultaneously from multiple angles. All ships in position, Admiral, Eric confirmed. Winters took a deep breath. This would be humanity's first deliberate engagement with the aliens. Execute in 3, 2, 1. Now. The Defiance surged from behind Ganymede, weapons hot. At the same moment, the other ships emerged from their hiding places. The Vraxian scout, caught by surprise, spun rapidly to face the nearest threat. "They're powering weapons," shouted the sensor officer. "Deploy reed shields," Winters ordered calmly. The blue energy barrier flickered to life around the Defiance, just as the Vraxian ship fired. The impact shook the ship violently, but the shields held. "Shields at 62%, Eric reported. "Better than expected." The human ships fired in sequence, forcing the scout to divide its attention. Its superior technology was offset by having to defend against attacks from multiple directions. "Target their propulsion systems," Winters commanded. "Remember the plan. We want this ship intact." Eric locked weapons on the alien engine array, firing main batteries. The Defiance's cannons unleashed a barrage that struck precisely where the Vraxian hull showed a slight variance in composition, a weakness identified from the Mars attack data. The scout ship lurched, spewing a cloud of glittering particles. "Direct hit. Their engines are offline," Eric announced. The alien vessel, now unable to maneuver effectively, fought back fiercely. One of the smaller human ships took a direct hit, its shields failing. "Myers, get your ship out of range," Winters ordered. "We'll handle this." With the scout focused on the Defiance, the third ship maneuvered behind it and launched a specially designed boarding pod. The pod latched onto the Vraxian hull and began cutting through. "Boarding team is in," came the report. Heavy resistance inside. For 20 tense minutes, the battle continued in the cold void near Europa. On the Vraxian ship, human Marines fought their way through alien corridors, facing creatures that moved with unsettling coordination, as if guided by a single mind. Finally, a voice crackled over the comm. "Bridge secure. We've taken control of the ship." A cheer erupted on the Defiance. They had captured the first intact Vraxian vessel. 2 days later, scientists and engineers swarmed the captured scout, now secured in an orbital dock near Mars. Dr. Reed led the technical analysis, while Samantha Collins focused on the ship's data systems. "Their biology is fascinating," Dr. Reed explained to Admiral Winters and Lieutenant Mason during a briefing. "The individual Vraxians are connected through some form of biological quantum entanglement. They literally share a consciousness." Samantha brought up a holographic display. "We've translated enough of their language to understand their purpose. The Vraxians expand by finding species they consider worthy of assimilation. They test each potential species through escalating challenges." "And Mars was just the beginning," Eric said quietly. "Yes, according to their records, they've conquered 17 other civilizations this way," Samantha continued. "Earth is simply next on their list." Admiral Winters studied the alien star charts. "Can we use their communication system?" Reed nodded. "We've figured out the basics." "Good," Winters said, "because I'd want to send them a message." 24 hours later, using the captured ship's array, humanity broadcast directly to the Vraxian homeworld. The message was simple. "We are not prey. We are not a test. Attack again at your peril." Throughout the solar system, humanity prepared for the response they knew would come. The early warning system triggered alarms throughout the solar system just 3 weeks after humanity's message. The Vraxian response had arrived much sooner than expected, a battle group of 12 ships, each larger than the vessel that had devastated Mars. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," Admiral Winters said, addressing the PDC Emergency Council from the Defiance. "But they're following standard invasion protocols based on the data we captured." They expect us to meet them in open space for a decisive battle. A battle we cannot win conventionally, added General Ramirez from Earth Command. Which is why we won't fight conventionally, Winters replied. Captain Foster briefed them on Operation Scatter. Captain Ryan Foster stepped forward, his face illuminated by the tactical display. At 34, he had been a renowned guerrilla warfare instructor before the Mars attack. The asteroid belt gives us the perfect environment for asymmetric warfare, he explained. We've prepositioned small, fast attack craft throughout the belt. Each is equipped with Dr. Reed's shield technology and our most powerful weapons. The plan was bold. Rather than meeting the Vraxian fleet head-on, humanity would harass them with hit-and-run attacks, using the asteroids as cover. They expect surrender after a show of force, Foster continued. Every day we deny them that victory damages their collective psychology. Within hours, the strategy was put into action. As the Vraxian battle group approached the asteroid belt, Earth forces remained hidden. The aliens, clearly expecting resistance at this natural defensive line, slowed their approach. Captain Foster led the first strike personally. 3 small Earth vessels emerged from behind a cluster of asteroids, fired a concentrated barrage at the rearmost Vraxian ship, and disappeared before the aliens could effectively respond. Similar attacks occurred throughout the belt. The Vraxians, accustomed to direct confrontation, struggled to adapt to an enemy that refused to be pinned down. Meanwhile, Dr. Reed's shield technology was deployed to Earth's major cities. Workers raced against time, installing emitters on skyscrapers and government buildings. On the 5th day of the campaign, Lieutenant Eric Mason led a particularly daring mission. His team of 4 ships drew 2 Vraxian vessels into a narrow gap between large asteroids. Hold course, Eric ordered his pilots as warnings blared throughout his ship. Wait for them to commit. The Vraxian ships followed, their superior speed closing the gap quickly. At the last possible moment, Eric gave the command. Now. His ships scattered in different directions while hidden explosives detonated on the asteroids. The resulting collision of space rock and alien hull disabled both enemy vessels. Mason to Defiance. Package delivered. 2 Vraxian ships disabled. Admiral Winters' voice replied, Excellent work, Lieutenant. Promotion to Commander effective immediately. Despite these successes, the Vraxian advance continued. By the end of the 2nd week, they had pushed through the asteroid belt, losing 3 ships but maintaining their numerical advantage. Intercepted communications revealed growing frustration among the alien collective. They had expected Earth to surrender after witnessing their power, or at least to fight according to recognizable patterns. They're adapting, Samantha Collins warned during a strategy session. The collective is learning from each encounter. Admiral Winters nodded grimly. Then we accelerate our timetable. Is Project Sunspear ready? Dr. Reed looked uncomfortable. The technology works in testing, but deployment on this scale is risky. We haven't had time for proper safety protocols. The Vraxians will reach Earth orbit in 7 days, Winters replied. We're out of time for proper anything. Earth's governments made the difficult decision to evacuate coastal cities, moving millions inland to areas protected by the strongest shield emitters. As the Vraxian fleet approached the moon, humanity prepared its secret weapon. Commander Eric Mason, standing on the bridge of his newly assigned vessel, watched the alien ships grow larger on the display. The final test was about to begin. The Vraxian battle group assembled in high Earth orbit, a formation of 9 massive ships positioned like a spear aimed at humanity's heart. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly sheen under the sunlight, weapons ports open and ready. On Earth, billions watched the skies with dread. Despite evacuation efforts, many had nowhere to go. In cities worldwide, the shield emitters hummed with building energy, creating a faint blue haze visible even in daylight. At PDC headquarters, Chief Engineer Laura Bennett made final adjustments to a device no larger than a coffee table. Project Sunspear, humanity's desperate gamble, was her creation, developed from principles discovered in the Vraxian scout ship. The physics are sound, she explained to Admiral Winters, who had returned to Earth to coordinate the defense. We're essentially creating localized gravity distortions that collapse into miniature singularities. They exist for only seconds, but that's enough. And you're certain they won't grow out of control? Winters asked. Laura's eyes showed both confidence and fear. As certain as I can be with technology we barely understand. The containment field should collapse the singularity before it can sustain itself. Should, Winters repeated quietly. The Admiral turned to the command center's main display. Status of deployment. All 26 Sunspear devices are in position, replied the operations officer. Stealth satellites have them positioned equidistant from the Vraxian formation. Winters took a deep breath. Commence Operation Sunspear. Throughout the command center, officers relayed the order. In space, the unassuming satellites activated, each sending invisible gravitational waves toward the Vraxian fleet. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one of the alien ships shuddered. Metal began to distort, as if being pulled by an invisible hand. A second ship experienced the same effect. Then a third. Gravitational distortion building, reported Dr. Reed, who monitored the operation from a science station. Approaching critical threshold. Suddenly, pinpricks of absolute darkness appeared near the affected ships, tiny holes in the fabric of space itself. The Vraxian vessels tried to move away, but the gravitational pull was too strong. Metal tore and atmosphere vented as hull sections were pulled toward the growing singularities. 3 Vraxian ships were torn apart completely. 2 more suffered catastrophic damage. The remaining 4 managed to engage emergency propulsion systems and escape the effect radius. Containment fields activating. Laura announced tensely. One by one, the miniature black holes winked out of existence as planned. A cheer erupted in the command center, quickly silenced by Winters. Damage assessment. 5 enemy vessels neutralized, reported the tactical officer. The remaining 4 are retreating to a position beyond lunar orbit. For the first time since the Mars attack, humanity had dealt the Vraxians a decisive blow. News of the victory spread across Earth, bringing hope to a planet that had been preparing for the worst. 3 hours later, Samantha Collins burst into the strategic planning room. Admiral, we've intercepted and decoded Vraxian communications. They're not leaving the solar system. She brought up a display showing the 4 remaining alien ships positioning themselves near Neptune. They're calling for reinforcements. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Project Sunspear had won a battle, but the Vraxians weren't abandoning their conquest. How long do we have? Winters asked. Based on signal propagation, at least 6 months before reinforcements could arrive from their nearest outpost. Commander Eric Mason studied the display. We can't just wait for them to come back stronger. No, agreed Winters. We need to take the fight to them. She turned to Dr. Reed. How close are we to understanding their FTL technology? Close enough for a prototype, but testing would be. We don't have time for testing, Winters interrupted. And we need allies. Allies? Mason questioned. We're alone out here. Not necessarily, Samantha said, bringing up data from the captured scout ship. The Vraxians have conquered other species. Some might welcome liberation. A plan began to form, bold, desperate, and perhaps humanity's only hope. They would reach beyond their solar system, not as conquerors, but as liberators. Operation Alliance had begun. The experimental warp drive hummed dangerously as the Defiance pushed beyond Neptune's orbit. The ship had been retrofitted with technology reverse-engineered from the captured Vraxian vessel, its original design barely recognizable under the modifications. Commander Eric Mason stood on the bridge, watching as the remaining Vraxian ships grew smaller on the rear-view screens. The enemy hadn't detected them yet. Another advantage of Dr. Reed's latest invention, a cloaking system that bent light around the hull. Warp drive charged to 90%, reported the engineering officer. Dr. Reed says that's as stable as it's going to get. Admiral Winters, joining remotely from Earth, appeared on the main screen. You understand the risks of this mission, Commander. Eric nodded. We all do, Admiral. But if the Vraxians return with reinforcements, Earth won't survive. Jump coordinates are locked on the Nelvarian home system, Samantha Collins said from her station. The intelligence officer had insisted on joining the mission, her knowledge of Vraxian data essential to their plan. According to the scout ship's records, the Nelvarians were conquered 60 years ago, but maintain a functional society under Vraxian control. They're our best hope for an alliance. Winters agreed. Good luck, Defiance. Earth is counting on you. The screen went dark. Eric took a deep breath and gave the order. Engage warp drive. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the Defiance vanished from the solar system. The journey took just under 3 days. An impossible distance crossed in what would have taken conventional spacecraft centuries. When they emerged, a blue-green planet hung before them, surrounded by orbital structures of obvious Vraxian design. Multiple vessels approaching, warned the tactical officer. Vraxian patrol ships. Maintain cloak, Eric ordered. Take us into low orbit. We need to find the Nelvarian resistance. For hours, the Defiance orbited silently, scanning the planet below. Samantha worked tirelessly, analyzing communication patterns until she found what they were looking for, encrypted transmissions that didn't match Vraxian protocols. There, she said, pointing to a mountainous region on the main continent. That's our best bet for contacting the resistance. Eric assembled a small landing team, equipped with portable translation devices and defensive weapons. They took a stealth shuttle to the surface, landing in a densely forested valley miles from the nearest Vraxian outpost. The Nelvarians they encountered were tall, graceful beings with iridescent skin and 4 arms. Initially terrified of the humans, they nearly attacked until Samantha activated a holographic display showing the battle at Earth. We share an enemy, Eric explained through the translator. We've come seeking alliance. The Nelvarian leader, who called himself Valor, took them to an underground complex hidden beneath the mountains. There, hundreds of Nelvarians worked with salvage technology, maintaining what remained of their once advanced civilization. For generations, we have served as laborers and resources for the collective, Valor explained. Many species have fallen to them. None have successfully fought back. Until now. Eric shared details of Project Sunspear and humanity's other developments. The Nelvarians were particularly interested in Dr. Reed's shield technology, which could protect their hidden bases from Vraxian sensors. But even with these advantages, we cannot defeat them alone, Veller said. The collective spans dozens of star systems. You won't have to fight alone, Eric assured him. According to our intelligence, at least 7 subjugated species still maintain some form of resistance. If we coordinate, a simultaneous uprising, Samantha finished, timed with the reinforcement fleet's attack on Earth. For days, the humans and Nelvarians planned. Using Defiance's advanced communication array, they made contact with other conquered worlds. Many were skeptical, but the evidence of humanity's successful defense was compelling. One by one, representatives of oppressed civilizations agreed to join the alliance. Each would receive specifications for shield technology and gravity weapons adapted to their level of technical capability. On the 7th day, as Eric prepared to return to the Defiance, Veller presented him with a data crystal. This contains navigation data for the Vraxian Central Worlds, the Nelvarian explained. If all else fails, you will need this to strike at their heart. Eric accepted the crystal solemnly. It won't fail. When we return to your space, it won't be as visitors. The plan was set. Across Vraxian-controlled space, the seeds of rebellion had been planted. In 6 months, they would bloom simultaneously, stretching the collective to its breaking point. The massive Vraxian armada appeared at the edge of the solar system exactly as predicted, 6 months after the Defiance's return from Nelvarian space. 30 warships, each larger than any vessel humanity had ever built, moved in perfect formation toward Earth. Admiral Winters stood in the PDC command center, her face illuminated by the tactical display. "All defense stations report ready," she announced. "Fleet is in position." Earth's combined forces had arranged themselves in a multi-layered defense grid. The outer layer consisted of automated platforms equipped with Project Sunspear technology. The middle layer held the bulk of Earth's military fleet, including the newly constructed sister ships to the Defiance. The inner layer, Earth's last line of defense, was a network of ground-based weapons and shield generators. Commander Eric Mason, now captain of the Defiance, addressed his crew. "Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species that has suffered under Vraxian rule. The plan is simple. Hold the line until our allies make their move." Across Vraxian-controlled space, billions of beings from 7 different species prepared for rebellion. The Nelvarians had distributed the shield technology and weapons designs to resistance cells on every subjugated world. All waited for the signal, the beginning of Earth's battle. The Vraxian armada approached Mars orbit, ignoring the automated warnings transmitted by Earth's defense systems. Their intention was clear: complete subjugation or extermination. "They're within range," reported the tactical officer. "Sunspear platforms are charged and ready." Admiral Winters took a deep breath. "Commence Operation Freedom." The Sunspear platforms activated simultaneously, creating a web of localized gravity distortions throughout the Vraxian formation. Unlike the first encounter, the aliens were prepared, their ships equipped with countermeasures. While 3 vessels succumbed to the artificial singularities, the others pushed through. "They've adapted," Winters said grimly. "Launch all fighters. All ships, engage according to assigned sectors." The space between Mars and Earth erupted in battle. Human vessels, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought with desperate courage. The Defiance led a squadron directly into the heart of the enemy formation, targeting command ships with precision strikes. On the bridge of the Defiance, alarms blared as a Vraxian weapon struck their shields. "Shield integrity at 40%, reported an officer. "Maintain course," Eric ordered. "We need to get closer to their command ship." Samantha Collins worked furiously at her station, transmitting the signal now. Throughout Vraxian space, the signal triggered the coordinated uprising. On the Nelvarian homeworld, shield generators activated, protecting resistant strongholds from orbital bombardment. Similar rebellions erupted on 6 other worlds, forcing the collective to divide its attention. The battle for Earth intensified. Human casualties mounted as ships were destroyed by superior Vraxian firepower. The Vraxians pushed through the outer and middle defensive layers, moving inexorably toward Earth. "They're breaking through Sector 7, reported the tactical officer. Admiral Winters remained calm. "Activate the final defensive line." On Earth, massive shield generators created a protective bubble over major population centers. Vraxian energy weapons struck the shields, which held, barely. Meanwhile, the Defiance had managed to approach the massive Vraxian command ship. "Boarding team ready," Eric reported. "You realize this is likely a one-way mission," Winters replied. "We understand," Eric said simply. The Defiance launched a specialized boarding pod, carrying Eric, Samantha, and a small team of elite soldiers. Using technology developed from their earlier capture of the scout ship, they breached the Vraxian command vessel's hull. Fighting was intense inside the alien ship. The team suffered casualties but pushed forward, finally reaching the central control chamber. Samantha immediately began working on the communication array while Eric and the remaining soldiers held off Vraxian defenders. "Broadcasting now," Samantha announced. "To every ship in the collective." Eric's voice, translated into the Vraxian language, echoed through the collective consciousness of their entire species. "We have distributed Project Sunspear technology to every world under your control. Each resistance now has the capability to create singularities at the heart of your central worlds. Withdraw from Earth, release all subjugated species, and recognize our collective sovereignty, or face extinction." To prove their point, a single Sunspear device activated on the command ship creating a controlled singularity that destroyed one section, but left the rest intact.